Right now, almost everyone has a job. You might be a teacher, a mechanic, a programmer, a doctor, or something completely different. You work for a certain amount of time, get paid, and use that money to buy the things you need. But ancient humans did things very differently. They didn't have offices. They didn't have salaries. They didn't have bosses telling them what to do. And they definitely didn't have a Monday morning commute. So what did ancient humans actually do all day? And more importantly, what was the first job in human history? The answer isn't as simple as saying hunting. Early humans didn't have jobs in the way we think about them today. Instead, they had different responsibilities that helped the entire group survive. Some people searched for food, some hunted animals, others made tools, collected firewood, built shelters, prepared food, or looked after children. Everyone had something useful to contribute. And this system worked for an incredibly long time. In fact, humans lived this way for most of our history. For most of human history, people lived as hunter-gatherers. This meant they didn't grow most of their food or raise large numbers of animals. Instead, they depended on what their environment provided. If there were plants, they gathered them. If there were fish, they caught them. If there were animals, they hunted them. And if they found a good source of food, they stayed nearby until it was gone or the season changed. This meant ancient humans couldn't simply specialize in one task all the time. A person might spend the morning gathering plants and the afternoon helping with a hunt. Another person might make tools one day and help build a shelter the next. Their responsibilities changed depending on what the group needed. But over time, people naturally became better at certain things. Someone who spent years tracking animals would become extremely good at recognizing footprints and following trails. Someone who worked with stone constantly could become much better at making sharp tools. And someone who knew the local plants could remember which ones were safe to eat and where they grew. This is where something important started happening. Skills were becoming specialized. Ancient humans didn't need a job title to become good at something. They simply learned from experience. A young hunter could follow an experienced hunter and watch how they tracked animals. A child could watch someone make a stone tool and eventually learn how to make one themselves. Knowledge was passed from one person to another. And this was extremely important because the environment could be dangerous. A mistake could mean eating a poisonous plant, getting too close to a dangerous animal, or damaging a tool that the group depended on. So experienced people became valuable. Their knowledge could help the entire group survive. Hunting was especially demanding. Successful hunters needed to understand animal behavior, weather, terrain, and tracking. They also had to know how to work with other people. A mammoth, for example, couldn't simply be attacked by one person with a spear. It required planning and cooperation. But hunting wasn't the only important skill. Gathering food required knowledge too. Ancient humans had to know which plants were edible, which ones were poisonous, when certain foods appeared, and where to find them. In some environments, gathering could provide a huge portion of a group's food. So, if we were forced to name the earliest forms of human work, hunting and gathering would definitely be near the top. But eventually, humans changed the entire system. For most of human history, people moved around to find food. Then, humans began farming. This happened independently in different parts of the world, beginning roughly 12,000 years ago. Instead of simply collecting wild plants, people started deliberately growing crops. Instead of only hunting animals, some communities began keeping and breeding them. This allowed humans to stay in one place for much longer, and that created a huge change. Food could now be produced and stored. Before farming, almost everyone had to spend a significant amount of time getting food. After farming became established, some people could produce enough food to support others, and that meant something new became possible: specialization. A person could spend most of their time making pottery instead of gathering food. Someone else could become a full-time builder. Another person could specialize in making tools. Someone else could become a trader. For the first time, humans were creating communities where different people could focus on different kinds of work. And this completely changed society. As farming communities grew, villages became larger. Eventually, some became towns. and eventually some towns became cities. Now there were thousands of people living together, and a large population needed many different kinds of workers. Farmers produced food, builders constructed houses, potters made containers, weavers produced clothing, metal workers created tools and weapons, traders moved goods between different places, and scribes eventually began recording information. These were much closer to what we would recognize as actual professions. People could spend years becoming extremely skilled at one particular type of work, and their skills could be exchanged for food, materials, or other goods. This created something that didn't really exist in the same way among earlier hunter-gatherer groups, an economy based on specialization. You didn't need to make everything yourself. You could become extremely good at one thing and exchange your work with someone who was extremely good at something else. A farmer could produce grain. A potter could make containers. The farmer could give grain to the potter. The potter could give containers to the farmer. Both people benefited. And as these exchanges became more complicated, new professions appeared. So, what was the first job? There isn't one simple answer. Humans have been doing different kinds of work for so long that the true beginning is buried deep in prehistory. Hunting is one possibility. Gathering is another. Toolmaking could be another. Even caring for children and maintaining a shelter required regular effort. But the important thing is that these weren't originally jobs. They were simply things humans needed to do. The modern idea of a job came much later. First came survival, then came skills, then specialization, then farming and permanent settlements, and eventually specialized professions. So your job today might seem completely disconnected from what ancient humans were doing. But the basic idea is actually very similar. You're using a skill that other people find valuable, and in exchange, you receive something you need. Thousands of years ago, that might have meant exchanging pottery for food. Today, it might mean exchanging your time and skills for money. The system changed, but the basic idea remains surprisingly similar. So, what was the first job in human history? There probably wasn't one single answer. Before salaries, offices, and careers, humans simply did whatever was necessary to survive. They hunted, they gathered, they made tools, they built shelters, they cared for each other. And eventually, those basic survival tasks became specialized skills, then professions, and finally, the huge variety of jobs we have today. And the way humans were paid changed too. Thousands of years ago, your paycheck might have been grain, food, clothing, tools, or other useful goods. Today, it might be money deposited directly into your bank account. The system changed completely, but the basic idea stayed the same. You provide something valuable, and you receive something valuable in return. So the next time you get paid, remember, your paycheck is part of a system that began long before money, cities, or even civilization existed. Because for most of human history, survival was the job. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about how humans lived, worked, and survived throughout history, make sure to subscribe to Factoria and turn on notifications. We've got plenty more fascinating stories about ancient humans, history, science, and the strange world that came before us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.